chat down there to say, and follow up with them directly. But on to the purpose of this. So special thanks to Crawford Coates. He is the content marketing manager at Lexipol and author of Mindful Responder. He is a co-founder of Below 100, former publisher of Calibre Press, and maintains the website mindfulresponder.com. He can be reached at crawfordcoates@gmail.com, and I'll probably put that information in the box as well. I am going to put a link to the chat in the chat box to the article that started this conversation. And with that, I guess I will kick this off to you, Crawford.
Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you to everybody who's participating this morning. I guess we can say it's morning because we're all in California. I appreciate all that you're doing, each and every one of you, both for attending this, taking the time to attend this, and also for getting out there and going to work every morning despite what is obviously an elevated level of stress, not just for you, but for a lot of people. So thank you for attending. I wanted to start out just by kind of telling a funny story, or an interesting story to me anyway. I was talking to Charles Remsburg, who is one of the authors of this book here, Street Survival, which a lot of you probably know. And I was asking him what Chuck Remsburg was actually, he was never a police officer, he was a journalist. And I asked him, what made you want to write this book that ended up selling 500,000 copies and launching a seminar and so much more, really changed law enforcement. And he said that in the late 70s, he noticed as a journalism that there was a tendency among law enforcement to have this feeling that, what he called fatalism. If your time is up, your time is up. If you get attacked, you get attacked, and you either live or you die. And he wanted to show that there are tools and techniques that you can use to stay in the fight, to win. And it was a really seminal moment for law enforcement when that book and that seminar came out, and it really kind of turned the tide for a lot of people. And I think that I'd like to segue into Below 100, which was something that I was involved in the beginning as well. And believe it or not, are you all familiar with Below 100? In fact, if you want to, you can type it in, yes or no. I'd be interested to know. Yeah, the thing that was interesting is when we started out, Dale Stockton and I, we actually got a lot of resistance. I love the thumbs up. We got a lot of resistance to that idea. And I don't think it seems very controversial in retrospect, but in 2011, it was, a lot of people didn't want to hear it for a number of reasons. But law enforcement is changing. And I think CPOA is really a part of the progress that we're seeing in law enforcement. They have a mandate to train and to educate, to look after the health and welfare of law enforcement, and to promote leaders. And I think everybody on this call has the potential to be a leader within your agency, because we all have to understand that we're all in this together. Everybody is feeling stress right now. And if you don't mind also, since we have done the poll thing, I'm interested in what ranks you all are. It'd be kind of to see, who's in the mix on here. But moving on, as the culture of law enforcement evolves, I think we're really in a new moment right now. Lieutenants, sergeants, captains. Wow, we got the bosses are here. Oh, deputy chief. Okay, well, I'll use big words then. Okay, we really are in a new moment. It's interesting to me, there was not a wellness-focused seminar among law enforcement until 2015. And now there are at least 3 nationally that I'm aware of: FOP, IACP, and Concerns of Police Survivors. I actually had the honor to speak at the Concerns of Police Survivors Wellness Symposium last October, where I taught almost 100 Chicago area cops to meditate. And I think if you had said that Chicago area cops would sit down to meditate 5 or 10 years ago, they would have laughed at you. but it was a very receptive audience. And I think we're in a new moment where people are open to new ideas. And which brings me to the article that Carol has shared with you, and sort of the reason that I'm here. And this came from my book, Mindful Responder. And these are ways that you can remain resilient in the face of the stress that you and everybody around you is facing right now. So I'll just jump into it, Carol. Does that sound good? Okay. So the first point that we all need to recognize, and I've said it a couple times now, is that we truly are in this together. And I don't know if you've noticed it in your communities, but I notice that people are a little bit more willing to say hello, to wave from a safe distance. People are, I think, responding admirably to the stress that we're all under. But tapping into social supports really can be as simple as waving to somebody as you drive down the street. We were not lucky enough to have a neighbor stop by, honk the horn, and wave last night. And I can tell you that made our night. So little things like that can make all the difference right now. And when I say tapping into social supports, I don't mean just being a hero as a police officer, which you are, but you're also a human being. And I think being able to ask for help if you need help, being able to listen to somebody who needs help, it's really important. And we can do that with text messages. We can do that over Zoom. We can do it with a phone call. If it's within your own family, you're still talking face to face. So tapping into those social supports is really critical right now. The second point in the article was that we should endeavor to be helpful. Being helpful, what does that mean? As a police officer, that sometimes you're trying to be helpful and it's simply not taken as help. But simply saying hello, stopping by, checking in on people, asking your spouse or your child, how are you doing? Listening. These are extremely helpful things. And the thing is about being helpful is that it gives you influence. This is an active and empowering act. When you help somebody out, you are expressing your own autonomy as a person. It can be easy too. That's the other thing, is that it doesn't need to be that you're sending a gift basket to somebody who needs it. You really can smile, wave, drive by the fire station, honk the horn, and run your lights just to make sure they're doing okay. Little things like that really can make a difference, both for you and for the people whose lives you're improving. My next point was maintain your sense of humor. And I'll tell you, we've been watching a lot of Netflix late at night after the kids are asleep, and it's mostly, we're not watching the tiger one that everybody else is watching, although looking forward to that eventually, but it's a lot of comedy. It's, when I'm sending texts, it's a lot of silly gifs. These are stressful times. For me, I have family members who have been very affected by COVID-19. My cousin, a firefighter, was quarantined for the last 2 weeks. He's okay now. But the first text I sent him after he came out of quarantine was a joke, and he appreciated that. The next point is to take pride in who it is that you are and what you do. And I mean this with all sincerity. Being a police officer is an honor, and there's a reason that each and every one of you signed up and took an oath and put on a uniform. And I think, unfortunately, as a society, we aren't grateful for all the sacrifice that you endure. Everybody, as I said, is stressed out right now, but we don't all have it. We aren't all called upon to respond to somebody who may be infected. I know that that's very, very stressful, but being proud of being a cop and serving your mission and remembering, why is it that I got into this in the first place as a police officer? And I'll tell you, from years of working with police officers, 99% of you will say, I got involved with it. I became a police officer because I wanted to help people. And now really is the time where we all need help. The next thing that I mentioned was that mistakes will happen, and this is inevitable. Mistakes happen in anything that you do if you're doing it. If you're a professional athlete, you're going to have days where you miss the shot. You're going to have times where what you tried to do your intention did not achieve fruition. And making mistakes is not just par for the course, it's necessary. In my book, the reason I think mindfulness is such a powerful tool for first responders is that we know from sports psychology that being self-aware has great benefit in the field. Being aware of your surroundings, situational awareness, is essential to what you do. But self-consciousness is something else. And there's a guy who teaches meditation to professional athletes named George Mumford. He taught Kobe Bryant how to meditate. He taught Michael Jordan how to meditate. Sasha Cohen. The little mindfulness practices to keep you from getting into that psychological space of self-consciousness and fear, and back into that place of self-awareness and awareness of your surroundings, which is so important as a police officer. And I'll talk a little bit at the end about some simple mindfulness techniques that you might consider if you don't have any of your own in this moment. Sorry, one sec. Keeping fit is very, very important now too. And this is something that everybody's mentioned, but we know the scientific literature is really clear that exercise is an anti-inflammatory. So is eating well. And, obviously nobody wants to get sick with COVID-19, but beyond that, for me, for a lot of people, hitting a punching bag is going to be the best stress reliever that you can do in a day, or doing a squat or going for a run. I was talking to an epidemiologist before COVID-19 recently, a guy named Bengt Arnetz. And he's done some really fascinating studies with police in Stockholm, Sweden, and Detroit, which are two very different places. But one of the things he mentioned to me in his studies was he studied cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So when you're really stressed out, you tend to have cortisone come on in a big way a few seconds to minutes after your initial adrenaline rush. And one thing that he noticed while doing his work with first responders and cops specifically is that as he was able to work with them to decrease the stress in their lives, the better they tended to eat. And he explained to me that when you're stressed out, it's natural. You want something sugary. You want something fat. And I was talking to a police chief just the other day. She said, I've never eaten better in my life now that I've retired, because for 25 years, all I was doing was trying to get something into my mouth between calls. And unfortunately, that's the reality for a lot of you. And there are times when that needs to happen. But right now, self-care is so important. And taking the time to eat a little bit better, if you can, and just remember to hydrate. It's just so important. The final, or not the final point, but the penultimate point is to get plenty of rest. And I know this probably sounds cliche, but as I've said, the police culture is definitely changing right now, and it has been for the last 5 to 10 years. And CPOA is a part of that change. But the importance of rest, I think, is still underappreciated in police culture. And I think that the bosses have a really important role to play in this regard. Getting sleep is one of the most productive things you can do. Oftentimes you think of somebody sleeping as being lazy. It's absolutely necessary for your how your body functions mentally, physically, everything. And some departments are actually, I know Henderson, Nevada has a napping policy now, where if you're just too tired, you can go to a room and take a nap if you need to. I know that's probably not going to be a popular route, but as leaders on this call, I think recognizing that people are tired, and when I'm talking tired, I mean exhausted. It's very important, and recognizing when you need sleep is also just so incredibly critical. So if you can, value the rest that you get. Make sure that you prioritize it. Make sure that your family prioritizes it as well. If you're working shift work, one thing we know for sure is that working nights is carcinogenic. That's a scientific fact. And that means that working nights over time tends to cause cancer in people. And we need to just recognize that not only is that bad for you over a long time, but it also causes police officers, especially people who are dealing with very high stakes situations, to sometimes make bad mistakes. So, and then finally, I think thinking small is really important right now. And it's a funny thing to say, think small, but we live in a moment right now where I know for myself, I can spin out of control if I start thinking, well, okay, the kids are out until June 1st. And what if my job doesn't, what happens to the economy long term? What if this keeps going? What are we going to do? What if someone I know dies? I can go big sometimes, and I have sometimes a tendency to do that a little bit too much. But now is really an opportunity to focus on what you're doing, what's in front of you right now. And that may be washing your hands sometimes, taking the time to really wash your hands. It may be on a call, just being present on the call, being there for the person, being there for if you're backing somebody up, just focusing on what it is that you're doing and trying to do it as well as you can. And I know that's really hard to do because there's a tendency across all of public safety to multitask, to try and do more with less. And that's just the reality. Unfortunately, a lot of agencies are understaffed, but we need to also face the reality that there's only so much that one person can do. And one of the things that I think is really important with thinking small is, I'll parlay this into a mindfulness practice, doing something like washing your hands, bringing your full awareness to it, taking time to connect with your breath, and just taking time for yourself is really, really critical at this time. I think if you don't have a mindfulness practice or a meditation practice for yourself prior to this event, prior to COVID-19, now is a good time to try. And I wouldn't suggest necessarily trying to learn to meditate, because it is stressful right now, but stick with it if that's something you're interested in. But there are little things that you can do. One thing I really recommend is if you stop at a traffic light, take a minute to reconnect with your breath, have a nice breath, and reconnect the mind and the body, sync them up together. Try and find peace and strength within yourself. Do that throughout the day. If it's not a traffic light that you use as a prompt, find some other prompt. Maybe it's a changing of the song on the radio, or every time you drive past something, something to make sure that you are taking just a few moments throughout your day to reconnect with that sense of self, that sense of purpose, and the peace that you have within you. The final point, this is point 9, and this is very pertinent to the previous, is to avoid what are called the 3 Ps. And the 3 Ps come from positive psychology. Positive psychology is the idea that rather than going to the therapist when your life is terrible, psychologists should be working to make life optimal, so that you never have to go to a therapist in the first place. Now that's maybe a little bit of a pie in the sky concept, but it's kind of like preventative medicine. You don't want to end up in the ER with a heart attack. It's better to know about that going in and try and remediate whatever issues you're experiencing. The 3 Ps of this are personalization. So making it feel like this is about me. Sometimes bad things happen and it's not about you. It's just a bad thing has happened. And the fragile ego, and I'm guilty of that, tends to insert itself into places where maybe it doesn't belong. The next thing is to think about things in terms of permanence. Things do change, and we've all seen how quickly our world has changed in the last few months. We need to recognize that things will change again. Whatever state we're in right now is probably not the state we're going to be in the future. So recognizing that if something bad happens to you, it's happened to you in that moment. You're going to be able to take a step out of that moment in the future. And life usually does go on for most of us most of the time. The final P is pervasiveness. And that is that whatever it is infects all areas of your life. In fact, as scary as COVID-19 is, and as prepared for it as I hope all of you are able to be with sufficient PPE and training, it is not everything in our lives. The sun still shines. I don't know where you are. I'm in Ventura, California. It's a beautiful day. And I think taking time to realize that it's not all doom and gloom. It's not all divisive politics and screaming, that there is beauty in this world, is really, really critical right now. Just as a note, the positive psychology comes from a guy named, or one of the founders is a guy named Martin Seligman. And I think as a police officer, you'll appreciate this. He developed this branch of psychology after studying dogs. And what he saw in dogs was that some dogs, you can actually teach, they will learn to be helpless. They will learn to electrocute themselves and to not get out of the way. That's actually the experiment where he coined a term called learned helplessness. And I think right now is a really important time to realize that we are not helpless either. We need to help each other. But the learned helplessness that you see, I'm sure on the streets with the frequent flyer calls that you get, the person who's calling all the time because they feel like they can't change their behaviors. And that's really what we're trying to avoid. So Carol, do you have any questions for me?
And mute myself there. No, I mean, I don't. I think personally, I took some interesting points from that. I guess I'm curious what some of the feedback from our listeners is, because, it sounds, some of the things, all of the things you said are pertinent. I'm going to guess that most of the people on the call probably aren't finding a lot of time to have a good sleep and restful sleep. There's bigger concerns that they have, but I do think that there were some points there that were not only helpful for them personally, but that they could bring into their agencies. And I'm kind of curious what others thought, especially about those moments of mindfulness. I'm just curious what the feedback from those on the call is that would be helpful that they think for their agency.
Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing that too.
If there's anybody who wants to pipe in, they can unmute themselves.
I'm curious, do any of you on the call have meditation or mindfulness practices currently?
By the way, somebody's posted, I took notes, but posting these pointers in a bulletin on the CPOA webpage would be helpful. I did, at the very top of this chat, I posted the whole link to that article. So if you want to open that and you can pass it around to your agency, you can do that.
Yeah, and also Lexipol, I don't mean to advertise Lexipol, but we have done a whole lot of free training on COVID-19. You can go to our homepage. We've really stepped up as a company. We've got a lot of good materials, training, policy, news, whatever you might need. I saw somebody who's mentioned the Cortico app. I know Dr. Black very well. It's great. So and again, I did include my email in my bio. So if anybody wants to reach out, if there's any other materials I can provide to you, I'd be happy to do so.
I'm going to post right now your email here at the bottom, so you can reach him. Is there any questions or any insight from anybody else on the call? Again, if anybody's doing anything good, this is your time to help out at anybody else that's on the call. So I'm sure people would appreciate it.
I guess I'll just mention something. I know that LAPD does a lot of meditation in the SWAT team. I was talking to George Ryan, one of the trainers there, about it, and he gave me a really good piece of advice. And that was, he said, don't try and meditate in your station. And the reason he said that is because, and I'd be interested if anybody has any feedback different, but he said there's just so many associations, smells, sights, sounds. It's very difficult to come and find peace within yourself. He suggests if you can in your personal vehicle before getting into the station, take a moment just to be with yourself, to connect with your breath. And there's lots of different ways to find peace, to find awareness within your life. I think meditation is a very good one. But as I said, if you've had trouble, if you've tried to meditate in the past, you're having trouble with it, sometimes just going for a walk is a great way to get out of your mind and come back into yourself.
Okay, well, it looks like our timing was right on this. So first of all, I want to thank you, Crawford. Thank you very much. Looks like we got some feedback saying this was a good topic. Again, that resource is at the top of the chat button. Thank you for attending. There are a whole series more. In fact, Dr. Black from Cortico will be speaking next week. So please pass it around. And if there's a topic that you think you would like to hear and you're looking for resources, please put it in the chat box and we will get people together to have this conversation. Otherwise, I really want to thank everybody for being here. And we'll send out a little survey too, just to let us know if this has been helpful. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Stay safe.
Yes, stay safe. Have a good day.